Honestly, when I first saw the data, I was just floored. I realized at that point that we were about to change the course of cardiovascular medicine. It's pretty well established that people that have elevated LDL cholesterol benefit from being on drugs called statins. What has been unknown is whether the same paradigm applies to people that have elevated triglycerides. Should they be on specific medicines to reduce their cardiovascular risk? That's what we set out to study in the REDUCE-IT trial. And this was a randomized trial of over 8,000 patients who were randomly assigned to either a drug, icosapent ethyl, the brand name for which is Vascepa, or to a placebo. And then they were followed for an average of about 5 years to see whether the drug would reduce their risk of bad cardiovascular events. Vascepa is being prescribed by some physicians right now for patients whose triglycerides are super high, above 500 milligrams per deciliter. We were studying it in people with lower triglyceride levels. Is it a risk factor for heart disease that we can modify? The results are really quite strong and, in a statistical sense, extremely rigorous. Patients randomized to icosapent ethyl had a 25% reduction in the risk of things such as dying from cardiovascular causes, stroke, heart attack, being hospitalized for chest pain, or needing procedures such as angioplasty or stenting. There was also a 20% reduction in death from cardiovascular causes. It's not clear to me that the majority of the benefit of this drug is just from the triglyceride reduction. It does lower triglycerides, but it does seem to have other sorts of biological effects. For example, cellular membranes, it appears, are stabilized by EPA, and it's possible that that sort of membrane stabilizing activity explains what we saw in the REDUCE-IT trial. For physicians involved in the care of patients with cardiovascular disease, or for doctors caring for patients with diabetes that have additional cardiovascular risk factors, I think that the trial results are going to be pretty broadly generalizable to a very large percentage of certainly the patients I care for as a cardiologist, but even for endocrinologists and primary care physicians. And that's in the context of a drug that was very well tolerated. Really, it was tolerated as well as placebo and reasonably safe. So for physicians who have found the results of REDUCE-IT immediately actionable to their patients, this is a drug that's already available for prescription use. It's not approved, as of yet at least, for the REDUCE-IT indication. So physicians will have to use their discretion about whether they want to use a drug off-label. That potential to actually improve patient lives, in some cases save patient lives, that doesn't happen too often in clinical trials. We now have a result that I think will improve the care and lives of patients throughout the world.